April 29, 1945. On the outskirts of Munich, the U.S. 157th Infantry Regiment closed in on a walled compound. Reconnaissance promised no fight, and what they found was hell. On the rail siding, 39 wagons overflowed with rotting corpses, the stench thick enough to choke on. A few hundred meters away, the crematorium still spat smoke, its flames devouring the last of the dead. Inside, over 32,000 prisoners hovered between life and death, skeletal, fevered, eyes hollow with starvation. Nearby, some SS guards had stacked rifles in neat surrender. No senior German officer came forward. Only a young lieutenant offered surrender without papers or orders. Then came the gunfire and the brutal massacre. But why did American soldiers kill them? Who gave the order? And why afterward was it never called a war crime? Hell on Earth uncovered by Allied troops. April 29, 1945, Dachau, Germany. The push toward Munich was almost over. The German army was falling apart in Bavaria, surrendering towns with barely a fight. For the U.S. 45th Thunderbird Infantry Division and the 42nd Rainbow Division, the orders were simple. Keep moving. Close the noose. Dachau wasn't on the objectives list. It was just a walled compound with towers spotted by reconnaissance along the route. Lieutenant Colonel Felix Sparks, commanding the 157th Infantry Regiment, ordered his men to move in cautiously. The perimeter was suspiciously quiet. That's when scouts found the train. It was a long line of 39 freight cars, baking in the spring sun. The stench reached the soldiers before the sight did, an acrid, rotting sweetness that clung to the back of the throat. Inside, bodies. Over 2,000 of them, stacked and tangled in heaps. Men, women, even children. The corpses were sunken and skeletal, skin pulled tight over bone, many still in striped prison uniforms. Some were frozen in postures of agony, arms curled, legs twisted from being crushed under others. The train had come from Buchenwald weeks earlier, carrying prisoners evacuated ahead of the Allied advance. The trip should have taken 2 days. Instead, bombed rail lines and chaos in the German transport system stretched it into a 3-week ordeal. With no food, almost no water, and no room to move, prisoners died where they sat. Others were shot by guards for trying to escape at stops. By the time it reached Dachau, it was a mobile graveyard. The discovery spread like wildfire through the American ranks. Even hardened veterans, men who had fought at Anzio and pushed across France, stopped in stunned silence. Sergeant William Cowing of the 42nd Division would later write in his diary, "There are no words to describe it. The smell was unbearable, but even more unbearable was understanding that this had been carried out methodically by other human beings." Around noon, a small delegation approached the camp's main gate. At the front walked Victor Maurer, a Swiss Red Cross representative, holding a white flag. Beside him was SS Untersturmführer Heinrich Wicker, just 23 years old. The ranking officer left after the camp command fled the day before. Maurer told Brigadier General Henning Linden of the 42nd Division that the camp held more than 32,000 prisoners, many gravely ill with typhus. He also warned that while about 100 SS men had already stacked their weapons in surrender, several guard towers were still manned, and there were armed Kapo prisoner functionaries inside. Linden accepted Wicker's surrender without papers or ceremony. Then the Americans went in. The first thing they saw inside were the barracks. What they found was even more shocking. Buildings built for 500 men now crammed with more than 2,000 each. The air was thick with waste and disease. Prisoners crawled or staggered forward, some leaning on each other, some silent with eyes sunken deep into their skulls. Captain Howard Wilsey, a medical officer, would later write that most suffered from starvation, edema, typhus, dysentery, or tuberculosis. Some had open sores from untreated wounds. Others carried scars from brutal experiments, incisions, burns, amputations. At the far end stood the crematorium. 4 brick ovens, still warm, each holding charred remains. A technician named Maximilian Grabner had been burning bodies non-stop for 2 days under orders to erase evidence before the Allies arrived. In the adjoining office, soldiers opened a stack of logbooks. The pages were neatly ruled, each line an entry. Prisoner numbers, dates, and the cause of death. Most were the same hollow phrases: heart failure, pneumonia, natural causes. Yet the numbers told their own story. In April alone, over 4,000 deaths. Some days saw as many as 250. From there, they stepped into the medical experiment block. The first room held a massive tank of icy water, once used for hypothermia trials. Next, a steel decompression chamber, designed to mimic high-altitude flight. Dr. Joseph Kintzy, a Czech prisoner and physician, explained that some test subjects died when the pressure changes ruptured their internal organs. Further in, other rooms contained surgical tables and trays of instruments. Here, healthy prisoners had been strapped down for vivisections, amputations, and organ removal. Kintzy described how the strongest inmates were chosen for endurance trials, starved, frozen, or deliberately infected with disease. Each week, the results were carefully packaged and sent to Berlin. Past those rooms lay the morgue. The floor was crowded with naked corpses, many bearing fresh surgical incisions or missing limbs. Some looked as if they had been autopsied only hours before the soldiers arrived. For the Americans, the truth crystallized. This was not simply a prison. It was an industrial system for killing, still running in its final hours. And the men now standing with raised hands, or watching from the towers, were the ones who had kept it running. Surrender or deception? Chaos in the camp. The surrender at Dachau looked nothing like a formal military handover. There were no signed papers, no official ceremony, just the collision of a crumbling Nazi command and American soldiers who had no rule book for what they had just walked into. The camp's chain of command had already broken apart. 3 days earlier, Dachau's last full commander, Eduard Weiter, abandoned his post and fled toward the Alps. That left the job of surrender to Heinrich Wicker, a 23-year-old SS lieutenant far down the ranks. Wicker had no real authority over the entire camp, yet he now stood as the highest-ranking SS officer on site. The one person who could still exert some control over the situation was Victor Maurer, a Swiss Red Cross delegate who had arrived the day before. He knew about an order for the camp's final evacuation, a Nazi code phrase for killing all remaining prisoners. He managed to convince Wicker to abandon the plan and instead offer the camp's surrender to the Americans before they arrived. But the situation was anything but clear. Wicker told Brigadier General Henning Linden that around 100 SS men had already stacked their weapons in surrender. Later, American units estimated there were actually between 300 and 560 SS personnel scattered in Dachau and nearby areas. Some had slipped out of their black uniforms and disguised themselves as regular soldiers or civilians. Others stayed in the watchtowers, weapons in hand, uncertain if they would surrender or keep fighting. This partial, disorganized surrender left the Americans on edge. They couldn't tell who had given up and who was still a threat. Lieutenant Jack Bushyhead of the 45th Division later explained the uncertainty. "We knew there had been a surrender, but also that there might still be active enemy. Some towers were manned. We didn't know if we were walking into a trap or a surrendered camp." The U.S. Army had no set procedures for freeing a concentration camp. Their manuals covered how to take prisoners in a battlefield, but Dachau was no battlefield. It was part prison, part death factory, and still partly in SS control. Officers on the ground had to make quick, personal decisions about how to handle the SS men. Were they prisoners of war or war criminals? Inside the camp, some SS guards in towers fired at prisoners who were rushing the fences. American snipers returned fire. These brief but deadly exchanges made it feel like the fight wasn't truly over. Then Captain Leland Thompson, an operations officer with the 42nd Division, searched the camp's administrative offices. In a desk drawer, he found Nazi orders dated April 26th, just 3 days earlier, calling for the elimination of witnesses and a final cleaning. These were not vague phrases. They were coded instructions for a mass killing of every prisoner left alive. The realization hit hard. The Americans had arrived only hours, maybe minutes, before the SS could have carried out a massacre. That knowledge added to the growing anger among the troops toward the guards now in custody.